The Energy Transition Podcast takes you directly to the cutting edge of the global energy sector's shift, with a specific focus on the critical role played by oil and gas, as well as the pathways developing around a lower carbon future. Your hosts, Leslie Beyer, Energy Workforce and Technology Council's CEO, and Dan Pickering, founder of Pickering Energy Partners, are joined by Josh Lowry, president of Upright Digital. Each episode engages industry thought leaders in an exploration of market-moving trends and topics, including new technologies, ESG, capital markets, inclusion and diversity, workforce innovation, regulatory influences, and the voice of the people. Join us as the Energy Transition Podcast looks at the state of the traditional energy and oil field service sectors, emerging technologies, and the path ahead in a world of lower carbon energy development.
Welcome to the Energy Transition Podcast. My name is Josh Lowry. I am joined with the first episode of Just You and I, Mr. Dan Pickering. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing great, Josh. Good to be here.
Isn't this, by the way, we are allowed as many trips and stumbles verbally as possible. We are live on the floor of NAPE 2022.
With a full complement of people watching and people coming in and injecting, so we could have some really exciting sort of unscripted, unscheduled events.
We've already had two of those. We've had, you guys, the audience won't understand, but right before we went live, and if you watch us on YouTube, which I encourage you to tune in and check out our YouTube channel, we had a guy just walk on set, try to hand us a printed out paper that he thought was very important. So if that happens again, we should just let it roll.
Yeah, we should.
How are you, by the way?
Good. I mean, NAPE has been busy.
Yeah.
It's a busy week. It's nice to see the world picking back up again. It's nice to see NAPE has both traditional energy and energy transition as topics. So life is good. And yourself?
I'm doing great. I actually talked to the NAPE people this morning, this afternoon, right before we went on live, and they said that they're double what they were last year as far as attendees. So,
from that's 7 people to 14 people given
right.
COVID.
I think oil's probably double too, right?
Yeah.
So we're
more
maybe
than.
Tracking, more than. But I'm doing well. We're just busy. We've got a lot of stuff going. I mean, some of the stuff with the new podcast studios and the mobile studios we'll be unleashing. But I tell you, I'm thrilled to be doing this podcast with you this year. And energy and transition it's a loaded topic. It's a loaded statement. You can do a lot with it. I know we're going to do a lot with it, and you mentioned renewables on the floor of NAPE. That's definitely a first. How many years have you been going to NAPE?
Since it started, I'll admit to being on the fringes for many years, because for a while it was so crowded that there was, you're just kind of pressing through bodies. It thinned out as the sector slowed down, and then COVID kicked in. But I don't know, 10 years, 11 years.
Okay.
The cocktail parties on the fringes are always exciting
Those
as well.
didn't stop.
Yeah. So that has been, there's been a little mini industry that's blossomed around this conference. It's fun to watch.
Good. Well, I think we were talking to our guest here a little bit earlier, and I said, you and I are going to talk for a minute. We could do this. I am hyped up on espresso, so I could talk to myself really for an hour if I had to, but we won't. Why don't you introduce our guest here today, and we'll get going.
You bet. And for those that are watching Energy and Transition for the first time, the goal of the podcast is really to highlight and bring knowledge and education around what's happening in the world of energy. That's not just oil and gas. It's not just energy transitions, hence Energy and Transition. And we thought that a great guest would be Glen Stancil. So I'm going to let Glen talk about his background, but let me just say that Glen is one of the deepest, smartest guys around electric charging and EVs that I've come across. And so I'm thrilled to get 45 minutes picking his brain. I can tell you I've spent 45 hours picking his brain, and I learn something every time. So with that, Glen, tell us a little bit about you. You're the CEO of Merge Electric Fleet Solutions, but you're more than that. So tell us who Glen is, and start from the beginning. First, the earth cooled. Then
is that what happened?
Then Glen.
Okay.
Welcome,
I can do
Glen.
that. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm a native Houstonian, born and raised here in Houston. I've spent most of my life moving between energy and technology. So I've worked in microprocessor design, and I've worked in refinery optimizations and all sorts of things. But I've spent the last 10 years specifically focused in electric vehicles, really building a team of folks that is focused on solving the charging problem that sits behind the adoption of electric vehicles.
Were there any EVs 10 years ago, Glen?
I got my first EV in 2011. So, 10 years ago. And back then you had two choices. You could have a Nissan Leaf with 80 miles of range, or you could have a Tesla Model S with 200 miles of range. So we've come a long way. I mean, today there's probably 20 models that you can choose from all sorts of manufacturers. I read recently we're expecting 85 new models to arrive in the next 3 years. So there are announcements every day that are coming out. So, that's one of the biggest changes certainly we've seen in the last 10 years. It's just an enormous, I'd say that the auto OEMs have now embraced an all-electric future. Whether it's the plants that they're constructing to build factories, the platform technologies they're investing in, they really have now embraced it. They're marketing it, they're pushing it, and from all aspects.
And I don't want to jump too far, but you say an all-electric future, all-electric. I mean, you seem...
I think they have a vision of getting all-electric. Now, it's not 5 years from now. It may be 20 years from now, right? And that electric will transition, hybrids will be in there. We'll have hybrid electric, pluggable hybrid electric, and eventually all electric. There are some categories that are particularly difficult to do right now. We finally have a pickup truck coming. I couldn't be more excited, right? I cannot wait to get my hands on an F-150 Lightning. But try to tow a trailer with it, okay, that's going to be a challenge for a while, right? So it'll take time before we get things like Super Duty and those types of trucks out there. But I think that's one of the biggest changes over the last 10 years is we've finally got an array of products that appeals to an array of customers. The other one is we finally have charging that can support that array of products that can get you across the country, right? You can move. I frequently drive to Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, and don't have to worry about it. So. Those are two big things that have changed in the 10 years that I've been doing
Right.
this.
And Glen, so back up a little bit because...
Sure. I got excited. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Then the earth cooled.
It's all good. So 10 years ago, you got in this business.
Yeah.
You were an entrepreneur. You were working for a company. Give us a little bit of your resume just so the audience can kind of understand your background.
Sure. So if I back up all the way, I'm an electrical engineer, University of Texas. As I mentioned, spent really time in microprocessors. I was not a power guy. I made fun of the power guys when I was in school, which I regret in hindsight. After that, spent some time in the energy industry, mostly refining and gas pipelines. Had the privilege of going to graduate school at Stanford at the business school. Worked for a number of technology companies out there, wireless data communications, GPS avionics, semiconductor manufacturing. So a variety of different things, and then ended up coming back to Houston to work in the power industry in 2003 with Reliant, subsequently NRG. And then while at NRG, we started up EVgo. So we kind of a back of a napkin on a flight back from Japan, myself and David Crane said, look, we're not the car, we're the plug, and how do we build a business around the plug to fuel EVs? And that's how we started EVgo. Did that for a number of years, and then started another small company to help other automotives get electrified. So working with automotives to help them build out charging and charging technology. A small company called eMotive. And then last year, we formed Merge. So I formed Merge Electric Fleet Solutions with a group of folks I'd been working with for about 10 years. So the company's new, but the team is old, has spent a lot of time in the industry building out charging services. Our focus is helping fleets electrify. Electric vehicles aren't as simple as gasoline vehicles. Gasoline vehicles, have been made amazingly simple. We have an incredibly powerful liquid fuels chain today, right? It is so simplistic. There is one model for fueling every vehicle, no matter what the use case is. Most companies, simplify the problem to a card that somebody takes to a retail gas station. Most companies don't operate their own gas stations. They're their own fueling facilities anymore. So that's incredibly easy. EVs can be difficult. There's a lot of different ways to fuel an EV. The cost of those and the complexity of those can differ. You can fuel at home. You can fuel in a depot. You can fuel in public. Those all have different implications and different cost structures depending how you do it.
So real quick, back to the formation. I saw that there is the new company.
Yep.
And I wasn't sure if that was if you were bought, if you were sold, merged. But you actually started this new.
Yep.
And Dan, you're involved in this as well, correct? I'm trying to just make sure I'm reading this right on the
No,
bio.
that's right, Josh. So one of the reasons I could twist Glen's arm is when we learned about what he was doing and kind of the vision for his business, we didn't want to just learn about it. We wanted to invest in it. So Pickering Energy Partners is a Series A investor in Merge. And so, I have I'm self-interested in folks knowing more about the business. But we were super excited about the opportunity set. And that's why I wanted to get Glen on, because I feel like he can talk to us not only about how things are going to happen in the EV world, but take it a step further, how's it going to practically work for businesses? Mm-hmm. So, back to the whole concept of this podcast, it's not enough to say energy transition is coming. It's how and why and help people understand how that happens. So
I think it's important this is going to be the first, we've already done I'm sorry, Glen, for once I have to digress for a second here. We've done the first podcast of introducing you and Leslie and myself, but really this is an electric vehicle conversation on the floor of NAPE. And I think, you know what I mean? That's
that almost tells you everything
and
you
I
need
want,
to know
I want
about
the
where
audience
the
to
world
understand
is.
that, we've had two people come up and approach us, and they see the energy and transition. We're very clearly an all of the above group of people. Yes. So, I want to be very clear. Like, we're trying to get to the bottom of the inevitables, not so much as what's happening. This isn't we're pushing certain things out. This is happening. I remember when you talk about 10 years ago, it feels like it's an unbelievable amount of time that's only 10 years ago, right? It feels like, Tesla's been around forever. Mm-hmm. They've done an amazing job just becoming part of our lexicon and our life now. And to think that, you mentioned the F-150 Lightning. I know country boys in Odessa that can't wait to get their hands on the F-150 Lightning, right? So it's certainly part of the mentality of a lot of our of just people.
Absolutely.
And it's not a sleek Tesla anymore. There are some slick other GM. I heard actually GM builds a better battery electric vehicle than even Tesla. I don't know if this is to be believed or not, but this is, again, coming from the person on the outside, this is kind of what I'm hearing is some of this battery power is really first class all across the manufacturers now.
Yeah, there's rumors on the GM platform. I think they call the Ultinium, or I can't remember, something like that. But there are certainly rumors that they have a very powerful platform, and they plan on using it across a variety of vehicles. Some very high-end, like the Hummer that we've already seen. The Silverado was announced, I think, at CES. That looks like a really, really powerful contender as well. And then all the way down to the Chevy Equinox, right? The basic vehicles. And I think they've got a very scalable platform that's going to serve them quite well across that range. They're the first ones to announce a Super Duty truck. They're saying 2025 for a Super Duty. We'll see how that does.
Is Merge agnostic to which platform they use?
We absolutely are. We're trying to solve the customer's problem. What is the right vehicle and the right charging solution for your use cases that you have in your company? So we like to talk to. We like to make sure that while certainly fleets do have some brand preferences, we wanted to make sure that they're open to a variety of different brands and models that can solve the problem they're trying to solve.
And again, Dan, I'm sorry. I've told you too much caffeine here. I'm hyped up. So when you talk fleets, you're talking anything from an Amazon fleet to a what? Give me examples of when you say fleets. What are we talking about?
It could be Tiff's Treats, right? They deliver treats to people. It could be healthcare, pharmaceuticals, pharma salespeople run around in fleets, right? It could be this industry. We've talked to a lot of the players on this floor about electrifying their vehicles in their EMP fleets. They're a great fit, but they need trucks. That's why we're so excited about trucks. Mm-hmm. Trucks and vans are the workhorse of American fleets. If you look at fleets, they're about 55 or 60% light trucks and vans, about 20% sedans, and then about 20% heavies.
So that's when I hear fleet, I think trucks and vans. When you said the salespeople on a like a pharma sales, I wouldn't even have thought of that actually.
Yeah,
but
tons of company cars.
Yeah.
And the pharma industry is under a lot of pressure because a lot of them are European owned. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of pressure on those guys. In fact, they're probably some of the most aggressive when it's come to setting targets for being 100% electric vehicles by 2030 as an example.
But Glen, why? So 2 questions. Yep. You said you're focused on fleets. Mm-hmm. Why not people? Why not individuals? That's question 1.
Sure.
And the other is, what are the economics behind? Why electrify fleet at all? We have lots of gasoline cars. Why not do that? Why not just stay where we're at?
Yeah, absolutely. So Why fleets? Well, fleets have high utilization and predictable utilization, right? They're going to get good payback on the electrification of a vehicle. So typically what you're seeing with electric vehicles is you pay a premium up front to get savings on the back. And that savings comes in terms of fuel and maintenance savings. So it's really what they call a total cost of ownership decision. You're thinking about the complete life cycle of the vehicle when you make a decision to purchase a vehicle. And in the case of electrics, that TCO decision is important because you're paying a premium up front.
Yep. You said fuel, so that's electricity is cheaper than gasoline?
Electricity cheaper than gasoline. So as an example, $3 gasoline, which I'd argue is about where we are these days, is
in Texas.
Is the same as about, I'd say 40-cent power. So what that means, if you're getting 10-cent power at home, you're getting 75-cent gasoline. So
Okay.
It depends on how you want to look at it, from which direction.
So it's fairly dramatic.
There's a fair bit of savings involved, and you look at a gallon of gasoline, a kilowatt hour of energy. Now, there's some complexities in that kilowatt hour of energy. You got to have a charger, right? It's got a capital
Which you have
equipment
to pay for.
You got to pay
Yeah.
for it. Plug into the car. But there still is a savings element that comes out on fuel, added to a savings element that comes down on maintenance. And then that value is what pays the premium that may be up front.
Why is maintenance cheaper?
Well, no oil changes. You don't wear brakes. There's no transmission fluids. I've owned EVs for 10 years, and I do two things. I rotate the tires, and I replace the windshield wipers. So it's very simple and easy maintenance.
What do you mean you don't? The brakes. How are the brakes effective? You just
Well, they have what's called regenerative braking. So they use the motors. They kind of reverse the polarity, creating magnets that pull the energy out.
when you're letting off the gas.
When you're letting off the gas, yeah. So if you've ever driven like a Tesla has one pedal driving, right? And you can kind of just use one pedal the whole time, and all it's doing is adjusting power in. You use it as a motor or a generator.
I'm more of a golf cart guy, Glenn, but I understand that concept.
You strike me as a golf cart guy, Josh, for sure.
The ultimate electric vehicle.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So, Glenn, you started talking about kind of the pace of adoption of EVs, and you said maybe we're all electric in 20 years, or it's the production of vehicles might be all electric in 20 years. Can it really go that fast? I mean, can we have enough batteries? I mean, how many cars a year do we sell in the U.S.?
About 17 million a year.
And how many electric vehicles can we produce right now?
Last year we were 4% of production.
4% of
4% of 17 million, give or take, is what we did. So we have a long way to go. Mm-hmm. And there are 300 million vehicles on the road. So if you talk about turning the portfolio
in the U.S. or in the world?
In the U.S. 300 million in the U.S. So if you're selling roughly 15 million a year, let's make the math easy, it's 20 years to turn over a portfolio if we started selling all EVs today, which we're a long way from doing, right? We're 4% right now. And Dan, to your point, to get from 4% to 100% EVs is a supply chain challenge. Right, it really is. It's batteries, it's copper, it's lithium, it's manufacturing capacities of cells and packs and vehicles. The entire industry has got to change, and it isn't going to happen overnight. So, personally, I think, that the energy transition is a 30-year event, and even in 30 years, I'm not convinced we'll be 100% electric on the vehicle side. There'll be some vehicles like your very heavy vehicles, your semis that pull 80,000-pound loads across the country. We may never get those electric. That's a tough problem.
I used to have a guy that worked for me. He was the best person I'd ever met at stopping a situation in mid-situation and saying, is this an outlier or is this actually something we need to worry about? And, a lot of people think, well, I can't have a gas or an electric vehicle. I drive too much. And you're like, wait, what are you talking about? You drive 40 miles a day, every day. Yeah. Right, and then once a year you take your family to Florida.
That's the one.
Right.
But people buy cars for that once in a lifetime event that they never do.
Right, exactly.
Right? And that's part of you mentioned consumer versus fleet. Consumer decision making is a sticker price. It's not a TCO decision. It's what is the sticker price or what is the monthly payment, and then it's, well, what happens when I have to take my extended family on a trip to Colorado in the middle of the winter? Well, I need a 4-wheel drive Suburban. Right, for that day. But every other day, that huge vehicle has one person in it driving 30 miles.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that mentality is one that I think change. I mean, truly, that's the thing you see the most in the media is what you just described.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I mean, a fleet is. I don't see how. I love the idea of and look, I'm not saying this because you're our guest or not. When you break it down, when I really heard some of those numbers on how far is the average person really driving, it really does become, well, that's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah.
That really does make a lot of sense. If you're just going, my wife, she's great. She runs her errands, but she's not driving 100 miles a day.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long, I really don't know the answer to the question, how long a car can go on one charge, 200 miles, 250, somewhere in that range? Or that's 10 years ago.
I'd say the modern EVs are running 200 to 350 right now per charge.
Glenn, let's look at Amazon,
Sure.
which is something that we all
touch.
we all see. So you
Love
can
Amazon.
barely drive anywhere without seeing an Amazon van parked somewhere. So they're talking about electrifying. Why haven't they? How long will it take them? What's the TCO for an Amazon switchover?
Yeah, so Amazon is electrifying. They have custom-built vans from Rivian that are on the road in small numbers right now. They're committed to be 100% electric for a number of corporate reasons. Amazon, if you look at last-mile delivery, which I'll put Amazon in that category, those vans drive about 80 miles a day every day, either 5 or 7 days a week, depending on the carrier. And the TCO is very positive for those guys. Now, it's going to be a question of the price of the van, and that's what we don't know. We don't know what Amazon is paying for the Rivian vans yet. But our estimate is that van is coming in at about a 25% premium to a typical Ford, van that they would drive
gas-powered van.
A gas-powered van. And if that's what you believe, then you look at the economics, and it is a very positive thing for them to do. Now, why aren't they doing it more aggressively? Well, it comes down to product, is they can't get enough product. Vans can't be produced fast enough for them to get hold of. And recently they announced that they're not just buying Rivian, they're willing to buy vans from anybody, which tells me is they're not able to get enough supply from one company, so they're opening up the aperture to work with whoever they can. And keep in mind, Amazon is a major shareholder of Rivian, right? So that tells me they really are in desperate, they desperately want more vans and just can't seem to get their hands on them.
So we think the math works for them. So
Absolutely.
it is a net present value positive decision because of this lower electricity cost and lower maintenance. So it's bottlenecks that is the reason they don't have more. How long do you think it takes to resolve these bottlenecks? When will if Amazon's the best buyer in the world and going to get it everything the fastest because they're money whipping everyone, how long does it take the normal fleet to be able to feel comfortable they can get vans?
That's a great question. I would think if Amazon, I think, is fully electric by 2030.
Okay.
When I just look at
So
how
9
long it
years.
takes them, 9 years. So I think other folks, it's 15 to 20. I mean, it's going to take
9
some
years
time.
sounds incredibly fast for a company that big.
Yeah. Well, and also keep in mind that Amazon is a series of small companies, right? The people actually deliver your boxes are actually they call DSPs, delivery service providers, small contractors of 15 to 20 vehicles that basically Amazon utilizes to deliver all these vehicles.
So they outsource some of that.
They effectively outsource a lot of volume. So you've got to get to a value proposition that works for a small business, right? These are hundreds of small businesses that do this.
Interesting.
And that's what Amazon will be aiming for. But I do think it is a long transition. It just takes time to get the right product and the right volume and the right quantities to get there. But I think the economics are compelling for companies to do this.
It's funny, Josh, you say, wow, that's really fast. I'm sitting here saying one of the biggest companies in the world, it's going to take them 9 years to do something that they've got the money to pay for right now. That seems like a pretty long time to me. So it's just an interesting difference in perception.
Well, when there's I'm saying that because he says that we can't even get product.
Yeah.
And you watch, and I think, Musk gets all this attention for how many cars he's producing, and he's still so far behind what a GM would produce on a gas. And so, I mean, I see that production is picking up and supply chain. How quickly can we get out of this COVID hangover, if you will, of supply chain to kind of get back to some normal supply chain streams?
Well, in the automotive industry, we're dealing with the I guess the supply chain issues with the classic automobile, right? The chips and everything else.
Yeah.
Once we get through that on the electric side, we're going to begin to hit challenges in raw materials and manufacturing capacity as the demand is ramping and the supply is trying to catch up.
So great discussion on EVs.
Yep.
Let's drill down even a little bit more detailed EV charging.
Sure.
So This is the equivalent of the gas station.
Absolutely.
You said at the beginning that there are a number of ways people charge, but talk to us about how that whole market's going to evolve. Are we all going to have, an EV charger in our house when we buy a new house, or what about people that live in apartments? And so, or what about fleets? So people are going to charge at home? Just make us smarter on that topic.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, gasoline fueling is wonderful. This industry has built the simplest approach. It's a pump, it's a flat cost structure, it's everywhere, it's simple.
By the way, it only got there over a long period of time. In 1920, it wasn't everywhere.
It took time.
Same sort of thing that we're talking about now. Yeah,
Energy and transition.
Exactly.
I mean, it is.
Let's hope it's not 100 years. But
yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
But on the electric side, the beauty of electricity, it's everywhere. Right. I mean, it's everywhere you go. We have electricity. The challenge is getting it in enough quantity to fuel a vehicle as fast as you want to fuel it. So the beauty of having it everywhere is you can charge at home, you can charge at work, you can charge in public. Pretty much anywhere you want to. The most convenient place to charge, of course, is where your vehicle spends the night. So if you're a consumer and your vehicle spends the night at home, plugging your car in at home like you plug in your cell phone is the simplest, cheapest, and easiest thing you can do. Now, the challenge is you may not own your home, or you may not even have a place to park, right? So that's where it gets a little harder, and you start to look at things like multifamily. Multifamily businesses need to get into the fueling business at the end of the day, right? They need to provide these types of services to the tenants who live in these buildings. For retrofitting buildings, that takes a lot of capital and a lot of effort and a lot of time. I think it will be done because it's the right thing to do. In the interim, though, if you want to own an EV and you live in an apartment building, you're probably going to your local grocery store for 30 minutes twice a week to plug your car into what's called a fast charger. So if you break down charging, you've got what they call AC charging, alternating current charging, and DC charging, direct current charging. So the AC charging is typically anywhere from 10 to 40 miles an hour. You plug it in and you'll get somewhere between 10, 40. 10 is your little outlet on the wall.
Your laptop.
You plug it in there, you get about 10 miles an hour. And that's all you'd need. And honestly, if you're only driving 30 miles a day, plug it into the outlet in your garage, you're good to go, right? It'll give you 30 miles a day, no problem. If you plug it into something like your dryer outlet, if you've got a dryer outlet in your garage, that's going to get you probably upwards of 70 or 80 miles a day, right? A lot more than that.
70 or 80 miles a day?
A night, sorry.
A night.
When you charge it overnight, right? Plug it in for 8 hours, you'll probably get, 70, 80 miles every night. Plenty of range, I would argue. If you plug into a DC fast charger, now we're moving to very high current charging, very high power charging, upwards of 350 kilowatts. And in a 20-minute period, you can put 300 miles in a car.
Wow.
Now, not as fast as gasoline. Gasoline is unbelievable, but not bad. Not bad.
That's an interesting point. When I pull up to the gas pump in my Land Cruiser, it takes me 5 minutes to fill the tank, and I get 350 miles.
Yep.
If I pull up to the DC fast charger, you're saying I get that same 350 miles in
25 minutes. 20 minutes,
so 2.5 times longer.
Now, it depends on the situation. If you're traveling, on a road trip.
By the way, I have a Land Cruiser too. You're not getting 325 miles to the tank.
To the tank on that one.
Yeah, he's getting a lot.
Wishful thinking. Wishful thinking.
He's getting a lot further in that 20-minute charge than we are on that 5-minute fill up.
There we go.
But if you're filling up on your way to Austin at the Buc-ee's, you're going to spend 20 minutes there anyway.
Yeah.
Right. That's
fair point.
It's the local fill up. It's I'm on my way home and I want to get home, but I'm out of gas. It's that I really don't want to stop, but I have to. 5-minute stop. That's when the 5 minutes is important.
Right.
It's less important when you're on a road trip.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. And when we think about today's gas station environment,
Yep.
we have the pumps, we've got the C-stores, and at least I think those businesses make money. Do electric charging businesses make money?
Electric charging in of itself has a difficult time making money, especially DC fast charging. And the reason is twofold. One is utilization. Is we don't have enough cars on the road to get the utilization high enough to cover the fixed cost.
Wait, say that again.
Yep.
Give it to me in Dan Pickering simple speak.
Sorry.
So there aren't that many cars yet.
That's right.
And so that's the issue. We just don't have as many cars as we need to keep a DC fast charging station busy.
Yeah, and most folks who own an electric vehicle today get 95% of their fuel at home. They charge at home, so it's not very often that they're going.
Right.
So fewer cars with less usage per month gets you a lot less usage.
Okay.
Right. So
why are people building out public charging networks?
I mean, I think it's a hope for the future.
Okay.
It's a belief that I will build it and they will come. And I'm not saying that's incorrect. There will be more EVs on the road. There will be fleets who need to electrify, who will need to put their employees' cars at places where they can't charge, right? So I may have a pharma sales rep who's going to drive a new Polestar and doesn't have a place to charge his multifamily and is going to have to go to one of these fast chargers to fuel that vehicle. So there is demand. There is demand coming. I think the challenge is when it will be here. And I think the other challenge is that you probably need utilizations north of 30% to get the financial break even on a DC fast charger. And 30% is high. That's on a 24/7 basis. It's going to be difficult to hit those numbers.
Like just for your average gas station, you're saying, right?
Yeah. I mean, your average gas
convenience store,
your kind of top quartile gas pump, top performing station has just over 20% utilization. So this would say that we're going to have to increase that utilization by 50%.
So that's a volume thing of cars.
Yeah. Which means people could be waiting in lines, and we don't wait in lines.
You know, it's interesting. It's so crazy. These are questions you don't even think about. I mean, I've never even thought about, because I know at a gas station makes 5% on the gas. That's what they're making on gas. A friend of mine owns a convenience store. Yeah. They've made money for 30 years on it, right? But you don't even think that, should I put in an electric charging station there? And the answer is yes, you should. But it feels like it could answer the question of, if I live in an apartment or if I live in multifamily, and there's a convenience store close by that is set up for the community, if you will, of local places where that is a place you go. I guess it is a convenience. You were saying that you don't wait. We don't wait. Americans don't wait for things, let alone gas or electricity. But I'm sorry to kind of digress into that comment. These are just things you've never thought about having to prepare for. This is really where it's going.
I promise you, Josh, if you have an electric vehicle,
right,
you start thinking about them.
You do.
Because
do you have an electric? I do have a Land Cruiser.
So I had a Tesla a while ago, and I love the car. I view it as a consumer product because it was really expensive and really fun and kind of really inconvenient at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at that time, especially at that time.
Yeah, because there weren't many places to charge, and I worried a lot anytime I strayed too far from my house. So,
isn't there a comment? What do they call that? Like
range anxiety.
What is it? Range anxiety.
Yes.
It's real.
It is a real phenomenon.
Well, but I mean, again, this is why you can't keep. It's not really a fair thing to say, well, one's good, one's bad. Like, so back to the Land Cruiser, we get 12 miles to the gallon in our cars, right? Mm-hmm. I had to put in an extra 12.5-gallon tank on my car just to get extra range, because even if I was driving to Dallas or Fort Worth, you can't make it up there on one tank, basically. I mean, you just can't. You're running out and having to pull over.
Well, now your tank lasts longer than your bladder, so you're going to have to stop somewhere.
To demographics.
Yes.
It's just so it really is interesting when you think that the trade-off isn't as much as you think it is, and then ultimately, how quickly does it become to where, you do have a Tesla or you do have whatever electric vehicle, and it's all right, I'm going to be in this for 10 minutes longer than I would to fill up gas, but what's 10 minutes when you're waiting?
Well, and if you're paying that 10-minute penalty a few times a year because you can fuel at home, it's well worth it. How many times do you not stop at the gas station, right? The savings you get there.
I want to ask one quick question on the charging at home. So we had on one of our other podcasts, Sonova. CEO.
Sure, absolutely.
John Berger.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that guy was smart, sharp guy.
Yeah.
And, he was talking about these Tesla walls at home.
Power walls. Uh-huh.
Power walls, right? I thought that was just really some of the coolest technology. So I went and looked at those. I was like, I want one of these anyway. I mean, you don't even need a generator in your house. Dan's asking that, how long do we have those? I mean, is that what we should be thinking about, or is it truly just a plug, or is it almost a power wall type product that comes into the house?
For charging the car?
Yeah.
Or? To me, you don't need a Powerwall product to charge your car. I mean, your house has sufficient energy and power to charge most EVs. So I don't know that the Powerwall would be necessary unless you're trying to fuel your vehicle when the power's out. Maybe.
That was the other thing I heard too, is that you could. I'll get too deep into this, but I do want to learn a little bit more about this. But it's the Powerwall aspect of it. I thought was some of the coolest technology.
Well, I tell you, one of the coolest things that's happened probably in the last 2 or 3 months is 3 manufacturers have announced what I'll call reverse flow capability, right? So now your one F-150 Lightning can be a backup generator for your house, right? So
that's the part I wanted to go into just now, but I didn't know enough about it to say anything. But that's what I had heard, is that you can do that.
Yeah, you can absolutely. In fact, the charging station that they provide you with the vehicle talks to your transfer switch. So when the power goes out, the transfer switch disconnects you from the grid and tells the vehicle to begin generating power to keep your house going.
I mean, that is unbelievable.
Yeah, and you've got it's 9.6 kilowatts, about 10 kilowatts, which is about 13 hours of power that'll come out of the
13 hours of power.
It's a 131 kilowatt hour battery in the Lightning.
Glenn, what does that mean? What's an average house consume? So give me when the power goes out in Houston and I turn my Lightning to turn on my house, do I get everything for an hour? Do I get everything for 2 hours?
So it depends on your house. So, my house, I can't power everything. I can't turn it all on at one time. There's just too much, right? I mean, I'm a glutton. I've got 3 air conditioners,
Yeah.
So
Houstonian.
You've got a Houstonian. There you go. But you can get your essentials powered: 1 air conditioner, a refrigerator, a microwave, an internet router. The essentials of life these days, and you can run those things for 10 plus hours without a problem.
So it's the real deal.
Yeah.
When we think about, now I'm thinking about the grid again, or the charging network. How big is it today in the U.S., and how big do you think it'll be in 5 or 10 years?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest part of our charging network is the part you don't see, and that's what's in everybody's homes, right? So there's probably 1 million plus chargers sitting in people's homes fueling vehicles today. Put that aside, in the public network, we have about 100,000 charging stations in the public network.
Physical locations, the equivalent of gas stations.
Those would be, those aren't physical locations, those are actual chargers.
Okay, so
gas pumps.
Yep.
Think of those gas pumps, right? Most of those, say 90,000 of those, are level 2 chargers. So they charge your car at 20 or 30 miles per hour.
So more slowly.
The slower ones, About 20 or 30,000 of those are your superchargers, your DC fast chargers that can charge cars at hundreds of miles per hour. So that's kind of the breakdown. The majority of our L2s are owned and controlled by ChargePoint. ChargePoint's put out more than anybody else. Now, they put them out.
ChargePoint, big public company.
Big public company, yeah. They're a purveyor of charging equipment. So you'll see their name on the equipment. They don't necessarily own and control it because they sold it to somebody who installs it that acts as the operator of that charger, such as your friend who owns a gas station. Most of our DC fast chargers have been put in by Tesla. They probably have about 60% of the chargers, maybe 50. And your second is probably Electrify America.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so those 100,000 locations, or 100,000 chargers.
100,000 chargers.
How fast is that going to grow?
So it has been growing at about 6% per year.
6.
Yep. So
which seems slow.
It does to me too.
Yeah, pretty slow. So I think there's a lot of headroom to grow faster. Yeah. The challenge is going to be the economics. It really is. You've got to put.
Isn't the government just going to pay for it though?
Well, I think if that happens, you could see an acceleration. You could certainly see. I mean, to date, most of the chargers that have been built on the back of some sort of a legal settlement or government program. Now, I'm putting Tesla aside. Tesla's built it on, I guess you can call it cheap equity or expensive equity, how you look at it, but they built it on a big equity asset. Electrify America was built on a settlement between Volkswagen and EPA and CARB.
Because of the Dieselgate
It was built on the Dieselgate, that's right. EVgo was built on a settlement between NRG,
State of California?
CPUC, and then FERC, I think, if I remember correctly. So there hasn't been a lot of ground-up activity from, like, your friend at the gas station, and part of it is because the economics are challenging. A gas pump is relatively inexpensive and has no fixed monthly operating cost, and it makes, as you said, 5% margins, right?
I mean, I understand economics rule everything, but is it some way? How many people like me do you run into on a daily basis that are hearing a lot of this for the first time? I mean, I would imagine that a lot of it too is just educating on what we're trying to do or what's happening.
Yeah.
Do you see that as part of the issue in the slow adoption? I'm not trying to get you to answer for everybody out there.
No, I mean, I think the people who are in the business are aware. I've spoken at NACS, the National Association of Convenience Stores, and talked to that
Of course.
group.
I mean, who doesn't know NACS?
Yeah, sorry.
Everybody does now.
Those like NAPE. I didn't know NAPE, so now I
Yeah.
know NAPE. But NACS is the National Association of Convenience Stores. They're all your C-store guys, right? And they are very engaged and aware of this topic. But they look at the economics, and it doesn't make sense to them. They also look at real estate. A lot of C-stores are not Buc-ee's. They're small footprint stores. They don't have a lot of excess space. And there are distancing requirements between EV chargers and petroleum fueling, physical distances.
So you don't spark and blow things up.
And blow something up, right? So you may find that a lot of small footprint C-stores have to decide gasoline or electric,
what am I gonna
not
be?
gasoline and electric.
That's interesting.
Your bigger guys will have some flexibility because they've got the real estate.
I've seen some stats.
That feels like it's more an East Coast problem than a Texas problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry.
The stats I've seen on charging is that, the Biden administration, the government, et cetera, would love to see that 100,000 be 500,000 pretty quickly.
Yep.
Are there any impediments? Are there any impediments to that happening? If the government said, "Here's all the money to do it," could you make that conversion in 3, 4, 5 years? Could you add 5 times as much capacity?
I think your two impediments are real estate and utilities. So you've got to find willing real estate participants. I'm not sure that convenience stores are it. You may find that it's more grocery stores,
Walmart parking lots.
And there may be a different category to get the real estate you want. And then how fast can the utilities move? Because all this power has to. It's not that we don't have enough power. I'm not worried about power plants. We've got plenty of power, but getting the power to the right place in the right quantities. We put in utility orders sometimes on fast charging stations that can take 6 to 9 months to get the utility work done. So that becomes a challenge. But once you get the money out of the way, those would be the two things.
So real estate
and utilities.
Yeah. Thank you.
You say we're doing this, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead on some of your questions, but when you work with a customer and you say, all right, we're switching you from gas to electric or taking you for whatever percentage, to go to that facility or office or whatever it is, it takes you 9 months to get the utility people in there to help get the infrastructure set up?
It depends. So the example I was giving you was from a very large, powerful DC fast charging station where we need to bring in 2 megawatts of power. That's a heck of a lot of power. If you're talking about a depot that maybe starts with 5 or 10 vehicles, no, that'll happen much faster. You may even have the power on site already to do that, right? But at some point, you run out of power on site, and you've got to bring in new service or additional capacity. That order point can run months in some cases to get what you need.
So, Glenn, when we think about Merge and what you're doing with your customers who are thinking about electrifying a fleet, you talked about the cost savings.
Yep.
But I want to nail that down. So help me understand: is it 5% or 50%, or where in the range?
Sure.
And then the other piece is it all about the economics? You hear some people that drive electric vehicles because they want to save the planet. Are they? Are there carbon savings here?
Sure.
So help us with that too.
Yeah. So I would say that there's 3 main benefits of electrifying. It's economic, environmental, and experiential. Okay. So economic, there is money to be saved. I would say, on the order of 20 to 40%. If you look at total cost of ownership.
Of a fleet or a car? Of an individual's car or a fleet?
Fleet.
Okay. That's a lot of money. I mean,
I don't think we're there on the individuals, because I can tell you the electric vehicle I bought was a hell of a lot more expensive, because I would never have paid I would never have paid the cost of the vehicle. The Tesla is like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
I'll pay up for it. But you're saying fleets could save me 20 to 40%.
And it depends on the vehicle, right? So right now, the price premiums in light-duty vehicles are kind of running 10 to 20%.
Okay.
Right. If you move into bigger vehicles, mediums, heavy buses, those premiums go to 80 to 100%. In that case, it doesn't work. So you have to choose your vehicle wisely, right? The vehicle has to have enough utilization to pay back, and the vehicle has to have enough range to meet the mission, right? So you just can't start electrifying things. You have to kind of step back and think about, how do I use this vehicle? How much does the vehicle cost? What's my cost of electricity? What's the cost of gasoline? And really kind of rank order, right? Where are the best ones to go for now, and which ones do we wait on and do later?
And that's some of the stuff that you help.
Yeah,
your
we
customers with.
do analytical assessments of telematics data to really figure out
What are telematics? Sorry.
Sorry.
If he wasn't going to ask it, I was going to ask it.
A lot of fleets have pull real-time data from their vehicles. How far are they driving? Where are they driving? How fast?
So
are they
Big
driving?
Brother is watching.
A little bit, yeah. So there's a lot of I won't say all, but certainly a large majority of fleet vehicles have telematics on them where they collect that data. We're able to ingest that data, look at it, and assess which vehicles have the best TCO savings, the best emissions reduction, and the least operational risk to go electrify. Right. So you want to electrify your whole fleet. You'll pick and choose the right vehicles. Over time, as new vehicles come out, more range, lower cost, more opportunity to do more electric. So
that's the economics piece.
Yes, that's the economics piece. And then the environmental piece, I would say 60 to 90% emissions reduction. It depends on where you are in the country and where you get your electricity from. So in Texas, we're blessed with a lot of renewables overnight with wind. That gives us a really good emissions profile. You're probably closer to the 80%. In the East Coast, we're still
80%
running 80%
reduction.
emissions reductions from gasoline. In the East Coast, less renewables, you're probably closer to the 50 or 60% on the emissions reduction. So, yeah, there's demonstrable emissions reductions. Does that convert into economic value? In most parts of the country, no. In California, yes. There are California credits for LCFS that aren't available in other parts of the country.
For what's LCFS?
Sorry, low carbon fuel standard. So that's a credit that if you reduce carbon output, you get a credit for it.
You get money in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And so economics, environmental, and now experiential. I mean, that almost feels a little sort of R-rated for a podcast, but tell us about what do you mean by experiential?
Well, those are the things that you couldn't have done without electric. So once you have an always-on electric platform, there could be new products and services that you can deliver to your customer, or you can allow your employees to do to increase productivity or change processes. So if I've got power with me everywhere I go, that probably makes me more productive. That may allow me to do things I wasn't able to do before.
A true mobile office.
A true mobile office, yeah. Or, I can run air compressors. I can run table saws. I can run, power equipment. I think there's all sorts of possibilities here of the new ways people can use, or the new ways businesses can use electrification in order to change their processes and in some cases their products.
What's an ideal customer look like? I mean, what?
I'd say light duty vehicle right now, preferably sedans, because we don't have vans and trucks.
The industry.
Yeah. We don't have broad availability of vans and trucks yet. We have lots of sedans and passenger cars. Like to see more than 18,000 miles a year to feel pretty confident that there's a payback.
Any outside salesperson knows exactly what that is.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then, if we get much over 150 miles a day, I could get a little bit worried that we'd have a cold day, hot day problem.
So you have a heavy urban salesperson, or I'm a sales guy, that's why I go to that. But I mean, really a heavy urban driving person that's staying local. Because you're talking about 150 miles. That's going to be in one general area.
Yeah, I think so. So that right now, I think that's kind of the sweet spot for us, is finding fleets, and I'd say fleets have 100 to 1,000 vehicles. So that's a pretty wide range.
Do you think we're going to see I'm thinking about the cable companies and the guys who have tens of thousands of vehicles across the country.
Absolutely.
Are they thinking about this?
Absolutely, yeah. I know for a fact AT&T is the largest owner of light-duty fleet vehicles, 65,000 of them that come to your home and do cable and everything else. But mostly vans and trucks. Mm-hmm. So we need vans and trucks, and we need a lot of them. I think in some cases they can take a van and put it into maybe what they call a compact SUV. the guy who comes to fix your router, maybe he doesn't need ladders on top because he's not installing anything. So they may find opportunities to get some vehicles in there. But ultimately, again, vans and trucks are the workhorse of the industry. And to get your cable company, your electrician, your plumber, they are the heart of the home services industry, and they need trucks and vans.
Yeah. And Glenn, if I'm the guy that shows up and says, I want to do it, I want to do it right now, how long is it going to take me? What's the timeline from calling you to say, help me, to being done?
When you say done, their fleet completely converted?
Well, or at least they're driving
my 50 car fleet.
Yeah. So if you've got a 50-car fleet, I would say we can get you started on the first, say, 5 vehicles within 3 months. Vehicles are tough to come by. That's our challenge.
Right now.
Just any vehicle, but even electrics, of course, are a subset of any vehicle these days. So I think in all reality, to get your all 50 converted, you're probably talking about 18 months.
So now I remember my question I was going to ask earlier.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good.
The business was started during COVID.
Yes.
So you really don't know post-COVID supply chains yet, do you? Okay.
No.
So I wonder, there's no history on how quickly that could go from 4 to 40.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
It's a real uncertainty. And, in the 10 years I've been in EVs, it's always about one thing, the vehicles. When are we going to get the vehicles, and when are they going to be here?
Well, now I want to know, a little off topic, but the more interesting is, what is it like starting this type of business in the middle of COVID? I mean, the middle of absolute chaos.
Yeah, I think our benefit as a team, we were already working together and we knew each other, so that really helped us a lot. We really built the opportunity at the intersection of ESG pressures mounting on companies, and we were seeing fleet-capable vehicles coming. Yeah. The challenge is that the dates we had in mind have moved.
What time frame are you talking about when you say we saw this and we decided this is what we wanted to do?
I think originally we talked about this fleet opportunity in 2019. We probably talked to Dan about it in 2020.
January?
Yeah.
I mean, truly, like
close.
What time of before COVID? January 2020?
It was pre-COVID, but
so before March.
Yeah, but it got remote pretty fast.
It did.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is that we built a business assuming we should already have trucks. We would have had trucks last year, right? And we probably don't have volumes of trucks until good volumes of reliable trucks until 2024.
So you think COVID has actually pushed out trucks from 21 to 24 now?
I wouldn't say it's exclusively COVID.
Yeah,
COVID certainly
okay.
has a big piece of it, but I think we've pushed out those dates 2 to 3 years.
Then I got one more leadership question. What was it like leading in the middle of all this? I mean, were you guys remote? Were you together? How did you build a culture? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're 100% remote.
Really?
We don't even have a physical office. Yeah, we may get one in the future, but our employees are scattered around the country, which has risks and benefits. The core team has worked together a long time, so we kind of have a working culture already. I think the challenge is as we bring on new employees, how do we extend that culture in a world that's completely remote? And it's an interesting question of what's the next world going to look like, right? How remote will it be? Will it be hybrid? I think you can get the best talent without any constraints, but you don't necessarily get the most out of your talent unless they're working together. And I think that's the balance that we're trying to figure out right now.
That's real. I did not know you guys didn't have a physical office, but you were 100% remote.
We're 100% remote.
Okay.
Yeah. Glenn, there's a big question mark in this space around autonomy and driverless vehicles and all that sort of stuff. Yep. Do you think that's a reality, and when, and does it change your business at all? Does it change fleets? Is it just a bunch of cars driving around, or?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on the fleet as to what the impact of autonomy is. So if we go back to our Amazon example, autonomy may be able to drive the vehicle, but it's going to be tough to get it to take the package from the vehicle to the porch, right? So there's certain use cases I think that are stronger on autonomy early, and I would call those kind of curbside use cases. If you guys have seen the Neuro vehicles running around, to me that's great. It's a low-speed, autonomous, passengerless vehicle. It has low risk. If something goes wrong, nobody's going to get hurt. If you run into it or it runs into you, you're not going to have a fatality involved.
Are these the ones delivering pizzas and stuff?
The ones that are delivering pizzas,
Okay.
avoid the Noid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important, and I think Neuro and others like them have approached this in a good way. Is let's start with safe use cases that people can be comfortable with, which is in this case low speed curbside delivery. Personally, I'm not ready to get into a 6,000-pound car going 80 miles an hour down the Katy Freeway in autonomous mode. I don't think the technology is there yet. I don't think it's ready, and I'm not in a position where I would trust it yet. But there is an awful lot of use cases where low-speed autonomy can add a ton of value and do a lot of things for us.
The line that Musk says is that in 10 years there won't, will we have driverless cars? He says in 10 years you won't have steering wheels.
Yeah.
Do you believe that, though?
I do not.
Okay.
I
So
do
you're
not.
going to take the over.
I have a Tesla Model 3, and I do use autopilot, but my hands are on the wheel.
Yeah.
I would not fall asleep at the wheel.
I
trust
feel
it to,
I'm on your camp on that one.
yeah. But I think there's tons of autonomous opportunity. Parking, low-speed material handling. There's all sorts of interesting things that can be done to increase confidence in the technology over time.
Dan, let me ask you this question. You brought up a good point. When you think of battery electric vehicles,
Yeah.
you think of driverless cars. I mean, that's kind of what it's been, all this technology, it can do this. And then I think some of the fear of that is, well, you're not going to need the driver anymore, because you do think of that large semi EV, their cab isn't even there, right? It's just it's just towing or it's driving with nobody in there. And then so that immediately makes the guy think, well, that's a job that isn't there anymore. And I think, it's important to note that that's not really the case. I mean, you are an expert. You're saying that you don't even believe it'll be there in that amount of time.
Yeah, no,
I listened to the fourth quarter earnings call for Tesla, and I would take the over on Tesla's ability to deliver full self-driving. It scares me at this point. There's a wide spectrum of believers between never happened to happening soon.
Yeah.
That's why I asked Glenn, because you're smarter than me on this, and you're taking the over on getting in the passenger car, driving at high speeds.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Glenn, we've talked about Tesla, we've talked about Rivian, we've talked about EVs a lot. So let's talk about them a little bit more.
Sure.
When you think about this, Tesla's the name on everyone's lips. It's the kind of everyman knows about Tesla. They may not have ridden in one, but they know about them. Can anybody catch up to Tesla?
Yeah, I think the incumbents will eventually catch up with Tesla. It's going to take some time. Tesla.
Time like 5 years, time like 2 years.
No, 5.
Okay.
I think
That is no time at all.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 5. From a technology perspective, I've been very impressed at how quickly, in particular, Ford has moved. I recently drove a Polestar. Came away very impressed.
Who is Polestar?
It's another brand.
Okay.
Yeah. It's sold through most Volvo dealerships in the U.S. That's how they distribute. But very impressive vehicle, very well put together. So I do think that the incumbents are catching up quickly. So quickly that I think that the window of opportunity for a lot of the startups could be closing now, right? You've got to get some scale and some brand to sustain in the auto industry. And it's taken Tesla arguably 10 years, right, to get enough brand power for somebody to stroke a $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 check. And now you're a brand new upstart trying to get in here, and you're going to go head to head with Porsche, Audi, Lexus. I mean, all the big names are going to be there. It's going to be tough to get space in those segments. Now, not to say there aren't interesting subsegments to get into. There are certainly specialty electric vehicles. I saw recently that Arrival is going to build a specialty vehicle for Uber and rideshare, right? Designed for purpose. That's kind of how Rivian got in. Rivian built a design for purpose van for Amazon for last mile delivery. So I think there'll be niches that people will be able to get into. And the beauty of electric is you don't need the kind of scale you would have traditionally needed as a traditional gasoline auto manufacturer. So you can get away with smaller scale. But I think to take on Tesla, who's I think over 1 million vehicles a year now, you're going to have the scale that an incumbent has. I don't think you're going to do that as a startup. So
okay, and so Tesla's in the lead.
Yep.
The big guys are catching up quickly. So this is not going to be one of those. Remember when everybody thought Tesla was going to be? You think they're here to stay as well?
I do believe Tesla's here to stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
So we've pushed you on fleets and EVs and charging. So our podcast is Energy in Transition.
Mm-hmm.
You've been around, you've lived in Houston for a long time. You've been around the energy business and power business for a long time. How do you think about energy transition?
Sure.
And, tell us where you're different than you think consensus is.
Okay. So to me, putting my electric vehicle hat to the side for a second.
Yep.
Our objective here is all about, reducing carbon intensity.
Who's our objective? The objective of energy
society.
transition? Okay.
Yeah, I think the objective of energy transition is to decarbonize our economies, and our sources of energy. And it was actually David Heikkinen who told me two first principles, which I still think are great. One is we must decarbonize the energy sector, and two is we must eliminate energy poverty, right? And you must do those together. So you can't just decarbonize and increase costs for everybody. That's not going to work, right? We've got to decarbonize in a way that brings costs down and makes energy more readily available to everyone, right? It can't just be for the privileged. So to me, to do that, we've got to make sure that and I think others have said this, that perfect doesn't become the enemy of the good, right? There are good solutions out there that we should adopt because they're readily available.
Such as?
Natural gas. Some people that I work with demonize natural gas. Natural gas is a wonderful substance, right? It's a lot cleaner than coal. It enables hybridization of big trucks, of trains, substantial reductions in CO2 intensity of a lot of different things. And to me, it's one of all of the above. Right. We've got to be open to looking at a variety of solutions, not just those perfect solutions. Right. I mean, generating power with natural gas, capturing the carbon and sequestering it and putting that power in an EV is a great thing. I am all for it. Right. But there's a lot of folks who don't want natural gas generated power. And I think it's an unrealistic outcome to achieve the carbon reduction outcome we want at a reasonable cost over this 30-year period. We don't have a miracle to go solve this problem right now. Let's take the steps we know we can take to make a difference and keep cost in control. And I think natural gas is one of those.
So you bring up a point where you say some people in my industry demonize it. Just like some people in other industries that they don't understand are going to demonize it, right? There's you can find two people to yell at each other just in any room you go into these days.
Yep.
So I wonder, one of the reasons that we wanted to do this podcast, the Energy and Transition, is we felt very strongly that any solutions, real solutions, are going to come from the energy business, right? There's the traditional energy business, oil and gas, natural gas, et cetera, because they do know how to come up with solutions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you say there's people in my industry, who are those people? I mean, where are those people coming from? Are they... I mean, what type of people are those?
And when you say my industry, is that the EV industry?
Yeah, I think the EV
charging industry?
Yeah, I think on the EV side, EVs can be a little bit purist, right? They don't even like pluggable hybrids, right? They like pure electric. Look, I academically, I love pure electric, but there's the practicalities of this, right? It can't solve all the use cases. So we need other solutions, right? We need hybridization. We need natural gas. Renewables are great, but they're intermittent. We need reliable power, right? We can't just have the lights go off when the wind quits blowing. That's not going to work for anybody. So until we can get to other things like hydrogen, make hydrogen economic, find a clean way to produce it, natural gas and other solutions like that are good transition fuels, and we should be taking advantage of them wherever we can. We have two cars in our house. We have an all-electric and we have a pure gasoline. Our next car will be a pluggable hybrid because my wife is not ready to have a pure electric. But 30 miles a day, all-electric is great, but she just wants that confidence of gasoline.
Well,
that's not a problem.
You might be going to Colorado next year.
We might be going to Colorado with the whole family, absolutely. But one point you hit on I really like is this industry, the traditional energy industry, is a powerhouse, right? It's a powerhouse that has delivered decades of declining real cost of energy and continuous innovation, even centuries, right? And Dan, this is one of the things that you and I first talked about is when I think about energy transition, there are opportunities for traditional energy to help new energy and new energy to help traditional energy. It goes in both directions, right? The power that this industry has to develop projects and develop technology and roll things out is amazing. In the other direction, I'm trying to put electric vehicles into the oil field, right? It is going to take everybody rowing together for a common goal. That's what we need.
That is exactly what we need, and that is the whole mission of this podcast is really to move an actual needle, as we described it when we were getting ready, just building the thesis for this. It is, I have a very strong principle that I like to get things right, not be right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, who's going to win if I'm right and you're wrong?
Yeah, neither of us.
No, exactly.
Right.
And the answer is, you're right. John Berger's right. There's a lot of rightness in both of these arguments, and there's a lot of rightness in this room.
Yeah,
and how do you combine these two? Because nothing turns off tomorrow. Nothing turns on tomorrow. So how do you take the best knowledge of this side, the best knowledge of your side, as you called it, I'll call this my side, if you will. The answer is more conversations like this and more understanding of what you're talking about. Yeah. There's just a lot of unknowns, because again, I think when people think of battery-operated EV cars, they think driverless vans are taking jobs from, my friends.
Yeah. No time soon.
Yeah.
No time soon. But I'm excited to see the renewables pavilion at NAPE, right? That's great.
Your cars are down here, by the way.
Yeah, we got EVs on the floor. I mean, it's, to me, that's what it's all about, is how do we work together? How do we leverage the incredible, creativity and power of the energy industry in new energy? Right? I mean, if we're going to go sequester carbon, who better to do it than the people who get carbon out of the ground to put it back in the ground and figure out how to keep it there? Right?
So I asked you this off air. You've never done a podcast before.
I have never done a podcast.
And how are you enjoying this experience? Aren't we great?
Very conversational.
This is just
like
wonderful.
Yeah.
But I think John Berger did an excellent job talking about his product, his service, his industry.
He's a solar guy.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. If there's a great Oilfield 360 episode where he was on it and just did an excellent job. And plus he's all over YouTube. But you're doing an excellent job. Who is a spokesman for your world on this electrification of fleets? I mean, who do you think is doing a good job where the audience can listen to this podcast and then at the same time go investigate some other information and learn more of what you're talking about? Is there anybody that does a great job that you feel is worth highlighting?
On fleets specifically, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I don't know.
So it's you.
I mean, there's plenty of folks who speak about electrification more generally, but I think of fleet specific. I can't think of anybody who's very fleet focused. Right now.
I mean, it doesn't fleet feel like the natural place for EVs to go right away for mid volume?
It feels that way. I think the challenge is that the auto industry starts with consumers. When they started selling individual consumers is when they started selling, the Leaf and the Tesla back in 2011. They were consumer focused, and they've pretty much been consumer focused. I'd argue the first one to aggressively move towards fleet is Ford. Ford has made a very aggressive move for electric fleet with the Ford Pro series. I haven't seen any other automaker yet be as aggressive on fleet. So.
And is that, Glenn, because the first vehicles need to be expensive to generate some margin, so you put more batteries in and higher range, and you don't need those for fleet. Individuals will pay for them, and so you wind up focused on individuals first.
I think it's a good hypothesis, right? If you look at the way they sometimes launch products, they go after the prosumers first with the ultra high end. Yeah. And if you look at what Ford has done with the F-150 Lightning, most of the volume sits in the Lariat Platinum XLT and less volume down on the Pro side. So it could very well
higher
be
price point.
Higher price point vehicles, yeah. So that could be just the economics drive them in that direction.
Glenn, you brought some electric vehicles to NAPE, which is a traditionally oil and gas audience. You mentioned that you're talking to some oil and gas customers.
Yep.
What's the reception? Is it a skeptical, dirty look kind of thing, or is it this is where the world's going and we might as well get on board? How are you being received by the traditional oil patch?
I mean, generally in the conversation we've had, very well received. I think there's a not if but when conversation. They know it's going to happen, but it's just a question of when. Very grounded in reasonable questions as to, well, how far does it go? What can it do? What can it do? Can it hold up on a lease road? right? Very simple questions, and very reasonable questions for people to ask. So I think there's a genuine openness to doing it. And as soon as we can get trucks, I think we're going to start moving.
I can tell you that NAPE was excited about it. We talked to them. They were very. I mean, it was not a hard sell to get these cars here on the floor. I mean, this is something that they've never done before. The renewables pavilion.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Exactly. I mean, this is so you have I truly believe you have an audience that's open to listening, wanting to listen. I did get some of the stats of the NAPE visitors. There's more first-time visitors at NAPE this year than ever before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's a lot of new people coming to listen to new ideas.
Sure. Glenn, we've covered a lot of ground. What ground haven't we covered? What are things that you think are interesting that we haven't talked about yet? Teach us, oh wise one.
I don't know. You guys hit some great topics: supply chain and general energy transition, vehicle availability, charging.
Okay. Sounds like we did a good job with our Q&A list.
Yeah.
So when we'll let you plug Merge a little bit, which
Sure.
is how do we find out more about Merge? Is there a website or?
Sure. Yeah, it's mergefleet.com. And again, our objective is to help fleets electrify. We begin by helping them build a plan because you've got to think vehicle by vehicle about how you're going to do it. We've got deployment, operation services to go implement that plan for them, and performance management to ensure that the outcome is what the plan is. That you get what you plan for from both an emissions and cost savings perspective. So,
great.
Yep.
Well, I love lightning rounds.
I can't wait to do this.
I love lightning rounds.
Oh no!
And
I was hoping you were going to do this.
in almost every panel format that I moderate, I don't let people elaborate on their answers. So I'm
Okay.
going to ask you yes or no questions
All right.
or one answer
One or the
question,
other.
one word answers. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And
Oh,
so
wow. All right.
bear with me. Some of this has nothing to do with your profession, and some of it I'm just curious to the answers. So, and Josh, I want you to answer too.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay,
all right.
at least on some of them. So, okay, coffee or tea?
T.
Espresso.
Okay, Ready Player One or The Matrix?
The Matrix.
The Matrix.
Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
New York City or Miami?
New York City.
Miami.
Golf or skiing?
Skiing.
Golf.
Okay, hamburgers or pizza?
Hamburger.
Pizza.
You guys aren't going to be in the same lines very frequently. Okay, puppies or kittens?
Puppies.
United Airlines or Southwest Airlines?
Southwest.
I love United.
Okay.
They're a sponsor of the show.
Okay. Boom. There we go. There was no answer other than that one for you,
perfect
Josh.
answer.
That was the
Airlines
right, that was the
all
right answer.
That's right. Okay.
Glenn meant to say United.
I did too.
There we
sorry,
go.
yeah.
Okay. Bullish or bearish S&P 500 for 2022?
Bearish.
Bearish.
Okay. Wind or solar?
Solar.
Solar.
Tesla or Rivian?
Rivian.
Tesla.
It depends on the topic, but the
Okay.
context.
He had real thought behind this. I can only think of the cool Tesla car.
you just went the opposite direction. Ford F-150 or Ford Lightning?
Oh, Lightning. That's easy. Lightning.
Since the cool part is that it can power the house, I'll go with the Lightning. I think it's pretty cool.
Okay.
Plus, I want to see one.
Yes.
There you go.
Now it gets tougher. Will the U.S. government hit its goal of buying only EVs by 2035? Yes
No.
or no?
I mean, when has the government hit its goal at anything?
Okay. Will we have 500,000 public chargers by 2030? That's the government goal.
Yes.
Up from 100. You say yes?
I say yes.
I say yes just because of the amount of, if we can get supply chain figured out, right?
And if they put money
Sure.
into it.
Yeah.
Okay. You're breaking the lightning round rules
Sorry, man.
with comments.
The espresso.
That's okay.
Espresso
yeah,
had me.
espresso.
He
I'm
broke it on the first question.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. So, will Tesla make more than 5 million cars in a year within the next decade?
No.
No.
Okay.
I'm following the leader on that.
Will
one.
EV batteries move away from lithium ion within the next 5 years? Yes or no?
No.
Within the next 10 years?
No.
You don't have to answer.
I
yeah,
don't
you don't get to answer. And my final lightning round question for you two Houston residents: will the Houston Texans make the Super Bowl in the next decade?
Oh man, no, I don't think so.
Damn.
I've been here 50 years. And
Yeah. Glenn, one of the things that Josh asked you was, is there a spokesman for kind of the fleet electrification process? And the answer is probably not, but I'm nominating you to be the
I'm
face
happy
of
to
the
be
industry.
it. Yeah, I'm happy to be it.
You know a lot, and I feel so much smarter having talked to you about these topics, and we really appreciate you making the time to be with us, and we wish you the best of luck with Merge, and hopefully you'll come back in a year or two, and we'll find out how things have progressed.
I appreciate being here. I hope to be here next year with 2 F-150s, Lightnings on the floor. That's
There
what
we go.
And did we promote his website here? I want to make sure we do that for him.
We
So
did.
it's
We did.
mergefleet.com. All right, good.
we did.
Good.
We did.
It has been awesome. I'm on the outside looking in on this, so this was truly educational for me, and I appreciate you. And to his point, you do an excellent job of presenting this information in a way that it feels very much like there's solutions needed for everybody, and I know people appreciate that. So that's going to wrap us up for today.
Great.
This is Glenn. This is truly appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. It was
Dan,
fabulous.
I know you're busy, man. Thank you for your time
Great,
and
Josh,
your
this was
commitment to
good.
the Energy and Transition Podcast. Again, my name is Josh Lauer. If you have any questions, look us up at uprightdigital.com. Sarah Millerin can answer any of your questions if you have comments about getting on the show or just in general Q&A. Look us up. Look us up on all our social media and LinkedIn, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. That wraps up from today. Gentlemen, thank you. Good luck to you all. Good luck,
Thank you.
Glenn.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Bye-bye.